The stage lurched to a stop in front of Enid's lone hotel, and Adelaide Crawford stepped down into the red Oklahoma dust with her father's leather medical bag clutched tight against her ribs, knowing every eye on the street was watching her fail before she even began. It was April 1893, and the town of Enid had sprung up practically overnight after the Cherokee Outlet land run just 8 months prior. The building still smelled of fresh-cut lumber and hope, though Adelaide suspected hers was the only hope that would be crushed before sundown. She smoothed her navy traveling dress and lifted her chin, refusing to let them see her doubt. Her father had trained her in medicine since she was 12 years old, teaching her everything he knew before consumption took him last winter. She was 22, capable, and the only doctor willing to come to this raw frontier town. That had to count for something. "You the new doctor?" A man with a silver star pinned to his vest approached, his weathered face skeptical. "Thought you'd be, well, bigger." "I am Dr. Crawford," Adelaide said firmly, meeting his eyes. "And size has little bearing on medical competence, Sheriff. It's Marshall Hendricks." He scratched his jaw. "Town council's waiting at the saloon. They'll want to meet you before we settle your contract." Adelaide followed him down the rutted main street, past the general store where women in calico dresses stopped their conversations to stare, past the blacksmith shop where the hammer ceased its ringing, past a group of cowboys who outright laughed when Marshall Hendricks explained who she was. "A lady doctor," one of them guffawed. "That'll last about as long as a snowball in July." She ignored them, though heat crept up her neck. The saloon doors swung open to reveal a long room that smelled of whiskey and tobacco, where 5 men in various states of prosperity sat around a poker table looking distinctly uncomfortable with her presence. "Miss Crawford," the eldest began, standing with obvious reluctance. "I'm Mayor Hutchins. We received your letter, and while we appreciate you making the journey, I'm afraid there's been some confusion." Adelaide set her medical bag on the table with a decisive thunk. "I assure you, Mayor, there has been no confusion. Your advertisement specifically requested a doctor trained in surgery, internal medicine, and frontier conditions. I have all 3 qualifications. My father was Dr. Samuel Crawford of Philadelphia, and I served as his apprentice for 10 years before completing additional studies with Dr. Elizabeth Blackwell herself." "That's all well and good," another council member interjected, "but you're a woman. How are we supposed to trust you with serious injuries, with childbirth complications, with men who have been shot or stabbed, the same way you'd trust any competent physician, through results?" Adelaide opened her bag and pulled out her credentials, laying them before the men. "I have letters of recommendation from 3 established doctors, a certificate from the Woman's Medical College, and a record of successful treatments that would rival any practitioner you might find. You advertised for a doctor. I am a doctor. Unless you'd prefer to continue relying on the barber and folk remedies." The men exchanged glances. Mayor Hutchins cleared his throat. "We'll give you 1 month, trial basis. Your pay will be half what we offered until you prove yourself. Take it or leave it." It was an insult, but Adelaide had expected nothing less. "I'll take it. Where's the clinic?" "Building next to the general store. It's rough, but it has a stove and a back room with a cot." Marshall Hendricks actually looked somewhat apologetic. "We haven't had much time to fix it up proper." By the time Adelaide unlocked the clinic door, dusk was settling over Enid like a threadbare blanket. The single room was indeed rough, with gaps between the floorboards, a desk that had seen better days, and shelves that would need scrubbing before she could stock them with medicines. The back room was barely large enough for the narrow cot and a washstand, but it would have to do. She lit a lamp and began unpacking her supplies, organizing them with the careful precision her father had taught her. Laudanum, quinine, carbolic acid for sterilization, bandages, surgical instruments wrapped in clean cloth, her stethoscope, her collection of medical texts. Each item she placed on the shelves felt like a small act of defiance against the town's expectations. A knock on the door frame made her turn. A cowboy leaned against the doorway, hat in his hands, brown hair catching the lamplight. He was tall and lean, probably in his mid-20s, with a face that spoke of long days under the sun and eyes that were cautiously curious rather than dismissive. "Dr. Crawford, I'm Asher Thompson. I work the Triple T Ranch about 5 miles south of town." His voice was low and measured, with none of the mockery she'd heard from the other cowboys. "Wanted to welcome you to Enid proper." Adelaide studied him, waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the joke at her expense. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Asher's fine." He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable but determined. "I know the town's not exactly rolling out the red carpet, figured someone should at least be decent about it. That's kind of you." She turned back to her shelves, not wanting to appear too eager for friendliness that might vanish as quickly as it appeared. "My mother was a healer of sorts. Kept the ranch hands patched up, delivered babies, set bones. She passed 3 years back, and I've seen what happens when folks don't have proper medical care. If you're half as good as those credentials say, Enid's lucky to have you, woman or not." Something in Adelaide's chest loosened, just slightly. She faced him again. "I am that good, Mr. Thompson." "Asher," he corrected with a small smile that transformed his serious face into something warmer. "And I believe you. Fair warning, though, doctor. This town's stubborn as a mule in mud. They'll make you prove it 10 times over. Then I'll prove it 11 times. Adelaide crossed her arms. "I didn't come all this way to fail." Asher nodded slowly, respect clear in his expression. "No, I don't suppose you did." He settled his hat back on his head. "Well, I'll let you get settled. If you need anything, the Triple T-Ticket's not far. My boss, Mr. Taylor, he's a fair man. He'll do business with you regardless of what the town thinks." "I appreciate that more than you know." After he left, Adelaide stood in the quiet clinic and allowed herself one moment of doubt, 1 minute where her shoulders sagged and her eyes burned with tears she wouldn't shed. Then she straightened, trimmed the lamp wick, and went back to work. The town expected her to fail. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Her first patient arrived 2 days later, a girl of about 16 with a mother who looked desperate and defiant in equal measure. "Mrs. Calloway," Adelaide greeted them, recognizing the woman from her shopping trip that morning. "What seems to be the problem? It's my Lucy. She's got a fever that won't break, and she's seeing things that aren't there." The mother's voice cracked. "The barber said to bleed her, but I remember what happened to my sister when they bled her for fever. She died anyway." Adelaide touched Lucy's forehead, noting the burning heat and the girl's glassy eyes. "How long has she had the fever?" 3 days now. "Started right after she helped me wash clothes in the creek." "Any wounds, cuts, or scrapes?" Adelaide began her examination, noting the rapid pulse, the dry lips, the way Lucy shivered despite the heat radiating from her skin. She scraped her arm on some brush, but it wasn't bad. "Show me." The mother rolled up Lucy's sleeve, revealing an angry red streak running up the girl's arm from a small wound that had become infected. Blood poisoning, then. Adelaide had seen it before, knew how quickly it could turn fatal. "I need to clean this wound immediately. The infection has spread into her blood." Adelaide moved quickly, gathering her carbolic acid solution, clean bandages, her sharpest scalpel. "Mrs. Calloway, I won't lie to you. Your daughter is very ill, but if we act now, I believe I can save her." The The men said you weren't a real doctor, Mrs. Calloway whispered. They said you do more harm than good. Adelaide met her eyes steadily. Then you have a choice to make. Trust their opinion or trust my training, but make it quickly because Lucy doesn't have time for doubt. Mrs. Calloway looked at her daughter's flushed face, then back at Adelaide. Save her, please. For the next 6 hours, Adelaide worked with the focused intensity her father had drilled into her. She lanced the wound, cleaned it thoroughly with carbolic acid despite Lucy's feverish moans, applied a poultice to draw out the infection, and dosed the girl with willow bark tea to bring down the fever. She stayed through the night, monitoring Lucy's pulse, changing her bandages, sponging her with cool water when the fever spiked. By dawn, Lucy's fever had broken. By afternoon, she was drinking broth and asking for her mother. By evening, the red streak had faded to pink and was retreating down her arm. Mrs. Calloway cried when she paid Adelaide's fee. Thank you, I'll tell everyone what you did. Tell them the truth, Adelaide said simply. That's all I ask. Word spread through Enid like wildfire, though not quite in the way Adelaide had hoped. Some folks nodded and admitted she seemed to know her business. Others insisted it was luck, that any fool could lance a boil and get lucky. The town remained divided, watching her with suspicious eyes, waiting for her to make a mistake they could pounce on. Asher Thompson came by the clinic 3 days after Lucy's recovery, this time with a ranch hand who'd been kicked by a horse and had broken ribs. Figured you'd do a better job than me trying to wrap him up, Asher said, helping the injured man onto Adelaide's examination table. She appreciated his confidence. Even if she suspected, he was also testing her competence himself. The ranch hand, a grizzled man named Pete who had to be 50 if he was a day, looked at her with deep skepticism. A woman's going to set my ribs. Lord help me. The Lord helps those who keep still and let the doctor work, Adelaide replied calmly, beginning her examination. She palpated his ribcage carefully, noting where he flinched and gasped. 3 cracked ribs, possibly a 4th. You're lucky the horse didn't puncture your lung. I'm going to wrap them tightly, and you're going to rest for at least 2 weeks. No heavy lifting, no breaking horses, no anything except sitting and healing. 2 weeks. I can't afford 2 weeks. You can't afford a punctured lung either, Adelaide said firmly, beginning to wrap his torso with long strips of bandages, pulling them snug but not so tight he couldn't breathe properly. Mr. Thompson, I trust you'll ensure he follows my orders. Asher leaned against the wall, arms crossed, a hint of amusement in his eyes. Yes, doctor, Pete's going to rest if I have to tie him to his bunk. You better be a good cook then, boss, because I'll die of boredom. I'll have Maria from the ranch house bring you meals, Asher promised. Consider it a vacation. After Pete was sorted and sent off in a wagon, Asher lingered. You're good at this. The doctoring, I mean. I'm aware, Adelaide said, cleaning her instruments with carbolic solution, though it's nice to hear someone say it without sounding surprised. I was surprised, Asher admitted. Not because you're a woman, but because you're better than the last 2 doctors we had through here. Both men, both incompetent drunks who couldn't tell influenza from indigestion. Adelaide looked up at him, studying his honest face. Why are you telling me this? Because I think you need to hear it. Because this town's going to grind you down if you let it, and that would be a damn shame. He picked his words carefully, as if they mattered. Because I have a feeling you're going to save a lot of lives here, and someone should acknowledge it. Something warm unfurled in Adelaide's chest, something dangerous that she immediately tried to tamp down. She couldn't afford distractions, couldn't afford to care what anyone thought of her beyond her medical competence. especially not a cowboy with kind eyes and a tendency to show up exactly when she needed a friendly face. "Thank you, Asher." "You're welcome, Adelaide." The use of her first name felt intimate, a small bridge crossed. "Can I ask why you came here? To Oklahoma, to a town that's barely more than tents and hope. You could have stayed back east, practiced in a city where there are other women doctors." She considered lying, giving him something simple and digestible, but his honesty seemed to demand her own. "Because back east, I would have always been Samuel Crawford's daughter, practicing in his shadow, accepted only because of his reputation. Here, I'm just Dr. Crawford. I succeed or fail on my own merits. That matters to me. That makes sense." Asher nodded slowly. "I came here for similar reasons. My father owned a ranch in Texas, had everything planned out for me, but I wanted to build something of my own. So I came up with the land run, staked a claim as a cowboy working for Mr. Taylor until I save enough to buy my own place. Do you regret it, leaving what was secure?" "Not for a single minute." His smile was genuine, reaching his eyes. "Even when I'm eating dust for 12 hours straight or sleeping under the stars in a thunderstorm. At least it's mine, you know." Adelaide did know. It was exactly how she felt about her practice, about her life here in this rough town that didn't want her. "I know." Over the following weeks, Adelaide's patient roster grew slowly but steadily. She treated a merchant for gout, a farmer for a badly infected wound, 2 children for measles, a woman for complications after a miscarriage that the town had been content to let her suffer through. Each success earned her grudging respect from a few more people, though the majority remained skeptical. Asher became a regular presence, stopping by to check on Pete's recovery, bringing ranch hands who needed treatment, sometimes just appearing with coffee and fresh bread from the ranch cook when Adelaide had been working through the night. "Don't you have cattle to tend?" she asked one morning when he showed up with breakfast for the 3rd time that week. "Cattle can wait. You look like you haven't eaten since yesterday." He set the basket on her desk, unpacking still warm biscuits and bacon. "Pete mentioned you were up all night with old Mrs. Henderson." "Pneumonia. She's stable now, but it was close." Adelaide accepted a biscuit gratefully, suddenly ravenous. "How is Pete?" "Itching to get back to work, which means his ribs are healing. He won't admit it, but he's grateful. Says you wrapped him up better than any doctor he's seen." High praise from someone who thought I'd kill him through feminine incompetence. Asher laughed, a low, warm sound that did things to Adelaide's equilibrium. "He's eating crow and it's making him ornery, but he told the other ranch hands you're the real deal." Word spreading among the cowboys at least. "The cowboys believe in me, but the town doesn't." Typical. Cowboys are practical. They don't care about social conventions, just results. You give them results, they're loyal. He paused, then added more quietly, "I'm glad you're here, Adelaide. This town doesn't deserve you yet, but maybe someday they will." She met his eyes, saw something there that made her breath catch. Admiration, yes, but also something softer, something that spoke of late-night thoughts and careful consideration. Something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. "Asher," she began, not sure what she was going to say. The clinic door banged open. Marshal Hendricks stood there, face grim. "Dr. Crawford, there's been a shooting at the Silver Dollar. Man's hurt bad. Can you come?" Adelaide grabbed her medical bag without hesitation. "Take me there." The saloon was chaos when they arrived, men shouting and shoving, blood soaking into the sawdust floor. A man lay on a table, clutching his abdomen, his face white with shock and pain. Adelaide pushed through the crowd without preamble. Everyone out except the marshal and one person to help hold him steady. She opened her bag, assessing the wound with practiced eyes. Gunshot to the lower abdomen, possibly the intestines. Critical but potentially survivable if she worked fast and clean. You can't operate on him here, someone protested. He needs a real doctor. I am a real doctor and he'll die if I waste time arguing. Out, now. Adelaide's voice cut through the noise with absolute authority. Asher, stay. I need your hands. She didn't question why she called for him specifically, and he didn't hesitate, moving to the table immediately. Tell me what to do. Hold him still. This is going to hurt and he's going to fight. Adelaide poured carbolic acid over her instruments, her hands the wound. The man screamed as the solution burned, but she couldn't afford gentleness now. She had to find the bullet, had to check for intestinal perforation, had to stop the bleeding. The surgery took 2 hours. 2 hours of delicate work while the town watched through the saloon windows, while Asher held the patient steady with strong hands and calm words, while Adelaide's entire reputation balanced on the edge of her scalpel. She found the bullet lodged near the hip bone, extracted it cleanly, checked for organ damage and found only superficial grazing of the intestine that she sutured carefully. Then she closed him up with neat stitches that would have made her father proud. He'll need to stay still for at least a week, longer if possible. The wound needs to be cleaned and dressed daily with carbolic solution. He can have water but no solid food for 3 days, then only broth and soft foods for another week after that. Adelaide addressed Marshal Hendricks, her hands steady despite her exhaustion. Can someone watch him? I'll make sure of it, the marshal said, his skepticism noticeably diminished. You saved his life, doctor, maybe. The next few days will tell. Adelaide packed up her instruments, very aware of the crowd still watching through the windows, of Asher beside her with blood on his shirt from helping, of the weight of judgment pressing down on her shoulders. Mayor Hutchins entered the saloon, surveyed the scene, and looked at Adelaide with something approaching respect. That was impressive work, Dr. Crawford. It was necessary work, Mayor. Adelaide met his eyes steadily. This is what I was trained for. This is why you needed a doctor. I suppose we did. He cleared his throat. The council will meet tomorrow to discuss your permanent contract. I think it's safe to say your trial period has been successful. It was as close to an apology as she was going to get. Adelaide nodded once and left the saloon, stepping out into the afternoon sunlight with Asher following close behind. You were extraordinary, he said quietly once they were out of earshot. I've never seen anything like that. Adelaide's hands started shaking then, the adrenaline draining away and leaving her hollow. I need to get back to the clinic, need to clean my instruments properly. Adelaide. Asher caught her arm gently. You're shaking. Let me walk you back. She wanted to refuse, to maintain her independence and her walls. But the truth was she did feel unsteady, the weight of what she'd just done crashing over her. Yes, thank you. They walked in silence back to the clinic. Once inside, Asher helped her lay out her instruments for cleaning while she sank into her desk chair, suddenly boneless with exhaustion. I thought I was going to lose him, she admitted. When I saw how close the bullet was to his intestines, I thought this was it. This was where I'd fail and prove everyone right. But you didn't fail. Asher knelt beside her chair, his face level with hers. You saved him, Adelaide. You did what needed doing, and you were brilliant at it. She looked at him, at this cowboy who'd shown up on her first day to welcome her when no one else would, who'd brought her patience and coffee and unwavering support, who saw her not as a woman playing at medicine but as a doctor, full stop, who looked at her now like she'd hung the moon. Why? She whispered. Why do you believe in me when your own boss, your own town doesn't? Because I see you, Asher said simply. I see how hard you work, how much you care, how good you are at what you do. I see your strength and your dedication and your skill. That's not something I can unsee, Adelaide. That's not something I want to unsee, her heart hammered against her ribs. Asher, I can't afford distractions. This practice, proving myself, it has to come first. I'm not asking you to make me first, he said softly. I'm just asking you to let me be part of your life. Let me support you. Let me care about you. I'm good at patience, Adelaide. I can wait for whatever you're willing to give. She should have said no. Should have maintained her professional distance, focused solely on her practice. But the truth was she was tired of being alone, tired of fighting every battle by herself. And Asher wasn't asking her to be less than she was. He was asking to stand beside her while she became more. I don't know how to do this, she confessed. Balance what I want to do with what I want to feel. I've spent so many years focused on medicine, on being taken seriously. I don't know how to let someone in. Then we'll figure it out together. Asher smiled, that warm, genuine smile that made her feel seen in a way she'd never experienced. No pressure, no rush. Just let me be here, Adelaide. Let me help when you need it, listen when you want to talk, bring you coffee when you're too stubborn to rest. Start there, and we'll see where it goes. Adelaide considered this, weighed it against everything she'd sacrificed to be here, and realized that maybe, just maybe, letting someone care about her wasn't a betrayal of her ambitions. Maybe it was simply allowing herself to be human alongside being a doctor. All right, she said quietly. We'll start there. His smile could have lit the entire Oklahoma territory. The town's opinion shifted gradually after the saloon surgery, like a massive wheel finally beginning to turn. The man Adelaide operated on, a gambler named Joe, survived and made a full recovery, telling anyone who'd listened that the lady doctor had hands like an angel and nerves like steel. More patients started coming to the clinic. People nodded to her on the street. The general store owner's wife invited her to the church social, but there were still those who resisted, who insisted her successes were luck, who spread rumors that she was unseemly and unnatural for doing man's work. The town's acceptance was conditional and fragile, ready to shatter at the first mistake. Asher's presence in her life became a steady constant. He never pushed for more than she could give, but he was always there, bringing horses that needed attention when she needed a break from human patience, sharing meals with her when she forgot to eat, making her laugh with stories about ranch life when the town's judgment wore her down. There's a barn dance next Saturday, he mentioned one evening as they sat on the clinic's front steps watching the sun set over Enid's ramshackle buildings. Would you want to go? With me? Adelaide's first instinct was to refuse, to maintain her professional distance. But she was tired of letting other people's expectations dictate her choices. Yes, I'd like that. You sound surprised at yourself. I am a little, she smiled ruefully. I've spent so long being careful, being proper, making sure no one could question my dedication to medicine. But I'm realizing that maybe I don't have to sacrifice everything else to be a good doctor. You don't, Asher agreed. You're allowed to have a life too, Adelaide. You're allowed to be happy. The barn dance was held at the Triple T Ranch, a massive celebration to mark the spring season. Adelaide wore her best dress, a deep green calico that her mother had made before she passed, and tried not to be nervous. She'd been to social events before, but always as Dr. Crawford's daughter, always under her father's protective presence. Never as herself, and certainly never on the arm of a cowboy who made her heart race. Asher cleaned up remarkably well, his dark hair still damp from washing, his shirt pressed, his eyes lighting up when he saw her. You look beautiful. Thank you. You look quite presentable yourself. The barn was transformed with lanterns strung from the rafters, hay bales pushed back to create a dance floor, long tables laden with food. Cowboys and townspeople mingled, music from a fiddle and guitar filled the air. And for a moment Adelaide felt almost normal, almost accepted. Then she saw the looks, the whispers, the way some of the women clustered together glancing at her and then away, the way some of the men shook their heads like her presence was an affront. "Ignore them," Asher murmured, his hand warm on her back. "Dance with me." She let him lead her onto the floor, let herself be caught up in the rhythm of the music and the strength of his arms around her. Asher was a good dancer, confident and sure, guiding her through the steps with easy grace. "Where did a cowboy learn to dance?" she asked, genuinely curious. "My mother insisted, said a gentleman should know how to treat a lady proper, even if he spent his days wrangling cattle." His smile was fond with memory. "She'd make my father and me practice in the barn. My father had 2 left feet, but he'd do it to make her happy." They loved each other. They did, still do in a way. My father talks to her sometimes like she's still there listening. Asher spun Adelaide gently, then pulled her back. "That's what I want someday, that kind of love that doesn't end just because life does." Adelaide's throat tightened. "That's a beautiful thought." "It's a true thought." His eyes met hers, steady and certain. "I'm not good with fancy words, Adelaide, but I know what I feel. I know that being around you makes me want to be better. Makes me want to work harder, laugh more, believe that good things can happen if you're brave enough to reach for them." "Asher." Her voice was barely a whisper. "You can't say things like that here in front of everyone." "Why not? It's the truth." He didn't look away, didn't lower his voice. "I care about you, Adelaide Crawford. I respect the hell out of you, and I'm not ashamed of that, no matter who's watching." Someone nearby gasped. Adelaide was peripherally aware of the music continuing, of other couples dancing, but it felt like they were in a bubble, separate from the world. "The town already doubts me," she said urgently. "If they think I'm being improper, if they think I'm distracted by romance instead of focused on medicine, they'll use it against me." "Then let them try." Asher's jaw set stubbornly. "You've proven yourself 10 times over. If they can't see that, it's their failing, not yours. You don't have to be perfect to be accepted, Adelaide. You don't have to sacrifice your whole life to earn respect you already deserve." She wanted to believe him. Wanted to let herself feel what was growing between them without fear or reservation. But the weight of being the town's first real doctor, of being a woman in a profession that barely acknowledged women existed, pressed down on her. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm scared that if I let myself want this, want you, I'll lose everything I've worked for." "I'm scared too," Asher said quietly. "Scared that you'll decide your work is all that matters, that there's no room for me. But I'd rather be scared and honest than play it safe and regret it." The song ended. Couples applauded and shifted, finding new partners or leaving the floor. Adelaide stood frozen, her hand still in Asher's, her heart warring with her head. Then Mayor Hutchins appeared, his expression troubled. "Dr. Crawford, I need you. There's been an accident." Duty called, as it always did. Adelaide followed the mayor out of the barn, grabbing her medical bag from Asher's wagon where she'd left it out of habit. A child had fallen from a hay loft, the mayor explained. Broken arm, possibly worse. The child was a girl of about 8, crying in her mother's arms, her right arm bent at an unnatural angle. Adelaide's training kicked in immediately, the personal turmoil fading as professional focus took over. "Hello, sweetheart. My name is Dr. Crawford. I'm going to help you feel better, but first I need to look at your arm. Can you be brave for me?" The girl nodded through her tears. Adelaide examined the break carefully, noting the angle, checking for bone protrusion or arterial damage. Clean break of the radius, painful but straightforward to set. "I need to put your arm back in the right position. It's going to hurt quite a bit, but only for a moment. Then I'll give you something for the pain and put it in a splint to help it heal. Your mother can hold you all right." She worked quickly and efficiently, setting the bone with practiced hands while the girl screamed and the mother sobbed. Then laudanum for the pain, a splint fashioned from wooden slats and bandages, a sling to keep it immobilized. Keep it dry and still for at least 6 weeks. Bring her by the clinic every week so I can check the healing. She should make a full recovery. The mother, who Adelaide recognized as one of the women who'd been whispering about her at the dance, looked at her with streaming eyes. "Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much. I don't know what we would have done if you hadn't been here." "It's my job," Adelaide said simply. "It's what I'm here for." When she returned to the barn, the dance was winding down. Asher waited by his wagon, worry clear on his face until he saw her. "Is the child all right?" "She will be. Broken arm, but clean." Adelaide felt the familiar exhaustion settling into her bones. "I should get back to town. Early day tomorrow." "Adelaide, about what I said earlier, you meant it. It wasn't a question. Every word." She looked at him. This good man who'd seen her for who she was from the very beginning, who'd stood by her when the town expected her to fail, who was offering her something she hadn't known she wanted until it was right in front of her. "I can't promise I'll always be available," she said carefully. "I can't promise my work won't come first sometimes, because people's lives depend on me. I can't be a traditional woman who stays home and focuses solely on her man." "I don't want a traditional woman," Asher said firmly. "I want you. Exactly as you are. Doctor first, stubborn, dedicated, brilliant you. I'll take whatever time you can give me, Adelaide, and I'll be proud as hell to stand beside you while you save this town whether they appreciate it or not." Something inside Adelaide cracked open, a door she'd kept locked for years. She crossed the distance between them and kissed him, there in the lantern light outside the barn, with the sounds of the dying celebration behind them and the vast Oklahoma sky above. He kissed her back with a gentleness that surprised her, his hands cradling her face like she was precious, like she was worth the wait and the complications and the challenge of loving someone who belonged first to her calling. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Adelaide felt something shift inside her. Not a sacrifice of her ambitions, but an expansion of them. Room for medicine and room for this for him, for the possibility of a future that included both her work and her heart. "I choose this," she said quietly. "I choose you, Asher Thompson, over the town's doubts, over playing it safe, over being alone. I choose you." His smile was incandescent. "Best thing I've ever heard." The next few months unfolded with a rhythm Adelaide had never imagined for herself. Her practice continued to grow as her successes mounted. She delivered 3 babies safely, all of whom might have been lost with a less skilled practitioner. She amputated a gangrenous finger and saved a man's life. She treated an outbreak of influenza that swept through town, working 20-hour days until every patient was stable, and through it all, Asher was there. Not hovering, not demanding her attention, but present in the quiet ways that mattered, checking on her when she'd been working too long, bringing patients to the clinic who might not have come otherwise, defending her competence when doubters still grumbled, making her laugh when the weight of responsibility threatened to crush her. They stole moments together when they could. Rides out to the ranch on her rare afternoons off. Dinners shared in her small back room behind the clinic. Conversations that stretched late into the night about their dreams, their fears, their hopes for the future. "I've saved almost enough to buy my own land," Asher told her one evening as they sat on the clinic steps watching stars emerge. "There's a section about 10 miles south that's coming up for sale. Good water, good grass. I could run my own small herd, build it up over time." "That's wonderful." Adelaide meant it, even as a small fear whispered in her mind. "Would you live out there, on the land, eventually?" But I've been thinking. He took her hand, threading their fingers together. The land's close enough to town that I could make the ride daily. Keep a room at the boarding house for nights when weather's bad or when you need me close. I'm not going to build a life that doesn't include you, Adelaide. I might not be able to leave Enid, she said quietly, voicing the fear that had been growing. The town's finally starting to accept me. If I leave, they might never trust another woman doctor. I might be trapped here. Then I'll be trapped here too. Asher squeezed her hand. Adelaide, where you are is where I want to be. If that's Enid for the next 40 years, so be it. I don't need adventure or excitement, I just need you. She leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart. How did I get this lucky? I ask myself the same thing every day. The town's full acceptance came, ironically, through tragedy. A fire broke out at the boarding house in late July, sweeping through the dry wood structure with terrifying speed. Adelaide was woken by the screams and smoke, grabbing her bag and running into the street still in her nightgown and wrapper. The scene was chaos. Flames leaping into the black sky, people running and shouting, the volunteer fire brigade hauling buckets of water that seemed pitifully inadequate against the inferno. And people hurt, burned, choking on smoke, suffering from falls and panic. Adelaide moved from patient to patient with ruthless efficiency, triaging on the spot. Minor burns got salve and bandages. Smoke inhalation got fresh air and close monitoring. Serious burns got immediate attention, her precious carbolic solution and clean dressings, laudanum for pain. A man with a broken leg from jumping out a second-story window got it splinted right there in the street. She lost track of time, lost track of everything except the next patient, the next wound, the next person who needed her. At some point Asher appeared, covered in soot and ash from helping fight the fire, and she put him to work holding patients steady, fetching water, helping carry supplies from her clinic. By dawn, the fire was out and the boarding house was a smoking ruin. 3 people had died in the blaze, trapped on the upper floor, but 15 people had survived who might not have, saved by Adelaide's quick action and medical skill. She stood in the middle of Main Street, her nightclothes filthy, her hands raw from scrubbing and treating, her face streaked with soot and tears. Mayor Hutchins approached her, his own face haggard. Dr. Crawford. His voice was thick with emotion. You saved those people. Without you, we'd have lost so many more. Adelaide swayed on her feet, suddenly bone-tired. It's what I'm here for. No, the mayor shook his head. It's more than that. You're not just here to do a job. You're here because you care, because you're good at what you do, because you're exactly the doctor this town needs. He raised his voice so the gathering crowd could hear. I was wrong to doubt you. We all were. Enid is lucky to have Dr. Adelaide Crawford, and anyone who says otherwise can answer to me. A murmur ran through the crowd, then someone started clapping, then someone else. Then the entire street was applauding, and Adelaide felt tears streaming down her dirty face, felt Asher's arm come around her shoulders to steady her, felt something inside her finally settle. She'd done it. Proved herself beyond any doubt. Earned not just grudging acceptance, but genuine respect. Come on, Asher murmured in her ear. Let's get you cleaned up and rested. You've done enough for one day. She let him guide her back to the clinic, let him help her wash the soot from her face and hands, let herself lean on him when her legs finally gave out from exhaustion. And when he put her to bed on her narrow cot and kissed her forehead, she caught his hand. Stay, she whispered. Just stay with me. Always, he promised, and settled into the chair beside her bed, her hand clasped in his while she finally slept. When Adelaide woke, it was late afternoon and Asher was still there, dozing in the chair with their fingers still intertwined. She watched him for a long moment. This man who'd chosen to believe in her when no one else would, who'd supported her through every struggle and celebrated every victory, who'd promised to stay and meant it with every fiber of his being. She loved him. The realization wasn't a shock so much as a recognition of something that had been growing for months. She loved his steadiness, his kindness, his unwavering faith in her. She loved how he made her feel seen and valued, not despite her ambitions but because of them. She loved how he wanted to build a life alongside her, not in her shadow or with her in his. "You're staring," he mumbled, eyes still closed. "You're worth staring at." He opened his eyes then, smiling that warm smile that never failed to make her heart skip. "How are you feeling? Sore? Tired?" "Happy." She squeezed his hand. "The mayor said they were lucky to have me. They are. Took them long enough to realize it. I couldn't have done it without you." Adelaide sat up slowly, every muscle protesting. "You've been my anchor, Asher, my support through all of this." "I don't think I ever thanked you properly." "You don't need to thank me for caring about you, Adelaide. Maybe not, but I need to tell you that I love you." The words came out steady and sure, no hesitation. "I love you, Asher Thompson. I love your patience and your strength and the way you see me as a whole person, not just a doctor or just a woman. I love that you make me want to be brave enough to want more than just my work." His face transformed with joy. "I love you too. Have for months now, if I'm being honest. Just been waiting for you to catch up." She laughed, the sound surprising her with its lightness. "Always so patient. With you, always." He stood, pulled her gently to her feet, wrapped his arms around her. "Marry me, Adelaide. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday when you're ready. Let me be your partner in all of this. Let me support your practice and celebrate your victories and hold you when it's hard. Let me love you for the rest of our lives." Marriage. The word should have terrified her, should have felt like a trap or a sacrifice of her independence. But with Asher it felt like possibility, like choosing to build something together rather than giving something up. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I'll marry you, when the time is right, when we're both ready, yes." He kissed her then, deep and tender and full of promise. And Adelaide kissed him back, choosing him, choosing them, choosing a future that included both her calling and her heart. They married that October, in the small church at the edge of Enid with half the town in attendance. Adelaide wore a simple cream dress with lace at the collar, and Asher wore his best suit that he'd ordered specially from the general store catalog. Marshall Hendricks gave Adelaide away, and Maria from the Triple T Ranch stood as her attendant. "Do you, Adelaide Crawford, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" the preacher asked. "I do," Adelaide said clearly, meeting Asher's eyes, seeing her future reflected there. "Do you, Asher Thompson, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Asher said firmly, his voice carrying to every corner of the church. "I surely do." They sealed their vows with a kiss that made some of the older women tusk and the cowboys whistle, and Adelaide didn't care one bit. She was Dr. Adelaide Thompson now, and she'd earned every part of that identity through skill and determination, and the courage to choose love alongside purpose. The reception was held at the ranch, a celebration that lasted into the night. Adelaide danced with her husband, the words still strange and wonderful on her tongue. She accepted congratulations from patients who'd become friends, from townspeople who now respected her, from the mayor who admitted he'd been a stubborn fool. "I'm proud of you," Asher murmured as they swayed together under the lanterns. "I'm proud to be your husband, proud of what you've accomplished, proud of the doctor you are." "We accomplished it," Adelaide corrected. "You believed in me when I needed it most. You gave me the strength to keep going when I wanted to give up. This success is ours, Asher. Then here's to us." He spun her gently, laughing when she stumbled and caught herself against him. To Dr. and Mr. Thompson and whatever comes next. What came next was a life richer than Adelaide had ever imagined possible. She continued her practice, her reputation spreading beyond Enid until she had patients coming from miles around. She delivered babies and set bones and treated fevers and performed surgeries, saving lives and earning the respect she'd always deserved. Asher bought his land and built his ranch, a modest operation that grew steadily under his careful management. He split his time between the ranch and town, always making sure he was available when Adelaide needed him, never making her choose between her work and their marriage. They had their first child in the spring of 1895, a son they named Samuel after Adelaide's father. She continued working through her pregnancy, much to the scandal of some of the older women, and was back in the clinic within 2 weeks of giving birth. Baby Samuel sleeping in a basket beside her desk while she treated patients. "You're going to scandalize the whole town," Asher said with amusement, watching her examine a patient while simultaneously rocking Sam's basket with her foot. "The town's had 2 years to get used to me. They'll survive." But she smiled as she said it, content in a way she'd never thought possible. Their second child, a daughter named Claire after Adelaide's mother, arrived 2 years later. Then another son, Thomas. Their family grew, and so did the ranch, and so did Adelaide's practice. She trained 2 young women who came to study medicine with her, passing on the knowledge her father had given her. One of them stayed in Enid, establishing a second practice to serve the growing population. The other went south to Texas, carrying Adelaide's teachings with her. The town council officially apologized for their initial treatment of Adelaide in 1898, presenting her with a plaque honoring her service to Enid. She accepted it graciously, though privately she thought the real victory was simply that she'd survived and thrived despite their doubts. "Do you ever regret it?" Asher asked one evening as they sat on the porch of their ranch house, watching their children play in the yard. "Staying here, building a life in a town that made you fight so hard for acceptance?" Adelaide considered the question, watching Sam chase Claire while baby Thomas toddled after them both. "No, I don't regret it. This town made me prove myself, made me stronger than I knew I could be, and it gave me you, which makes everything else worth it. Even the doubts, the judgment, the years of struggling, even that." She leaned against him, feeling his solid warmth, the steadiness that had sustained her through everything. "I chose you over their doubts, Asher. I chose us. That was the best decision I ever made." He kissed the top of her head. "I love you, Adelaide Thompson. I loved you when you were the stubborn lady doctor who refused to fail. I love you now as the respected physician, the mother of my children, the partner in my life. I'll love you until the day I die and beyond, if the universe allows it." That's quite a declaration. It's quite a love. Their children grew, and Adelaide taught them all about medicine regardless of whether they were boys or girls. Sam showed an aptitude for it and eventually went east to medical school, returning to join his mother's practice. Claire became a teacher, opening a school in Enid that educated both boys and girls to Adelaide's fierce pride. Thomas took after his father, expanding the ranch until it was one of the most successful operations in the Oklahoma Territory. Adelaide continued practicing medicine until she was 70 years old, finally retiring when her hands grew too unsteady for surgery. By then, she'd trained 15 women doctors, delivered over 300 babies, and saved countless lives. The town of Enid had grown from a rough frontier settlement to a proper town, and Adelaide's clinic had expanded into a full hospital with multiple doctors on staff. She and Asher spent their final years together on the ranch, surrounded by children and grandchildren, watching the land they'd claimed become something permanent and beautiful. They sat on the porch in the evenings, holding hands as they'd always done, content in a love that had weathered every storm and emerged stronger. "Did I ever tell you," Adelaide said one evening when they were both in their 80s, "that I almost didn't come to Enid? I almost took a position in Kansas City instead." "You never mentioned that." Asher looked at her with surprise. "What made you choose Enid?" "The advertisement specifically said they were desperate. No other doctor would come." She smiled at the memory. "I thought, here's a place that needs me so badly they won't have the luxury of turning me away because I'm a woman. It was practical more than anything. And now I think fate had a hand in it, because if I'd gone to Kansas City, I never would have met you. Never would have had this life, these children, this love. The town expected me to fail, but you expected me to stay. You saw a future for us when I couldn't see past proving myself. That gift, Asher, that belief you had in me and in us, that's what made all the difference." He raised her wrinkled hand to his lips, kissing it gently. "You made the difference, Adelaide. You were brave enough to choose love alongside purpose, to refuse the false choice between your calling and your heart. You showed this town and everyone watching that a woman could be an exceptional doctor and a devoted wife and mother, that she could have it all if she was strong enough and found the right partner." "We found each other," Adelaide corrected. "That's the truth of it. Against all odds and expectations, we found each other and built something beautiful." They sat together as the sun set over their land, over the town that had doubted her and the life she'd claimed anyway. Adelaide thought about that young woman who'd stepped off the stage into the red Oklahoma dust, determined not to fail, never imagining she'd find not just professional success, but profound personal happiness. The town had expected her to fail, expected her to crumble under their skepticism and return east with her tail between her legs. But she'd proven them wrong through skill and dedication, and sheer stubborn will. Asher had expected her to stay, though perhaps even he hadn't imagined the full scope of the life they'd build together. He'd seen her clearly from the beginning, seen her strength and her vulnerability, her ambition and her loneliness. He'd offered support without conditions, love without constraints, partnership without compromise of who she fundamentally was. And she'd chosen him over their doubts, over the safety of solitude, over the fear that letting someone in would diminish her somehow. That choice had expanded her life in ways she couldn't have anticipated, adding depth and richness and joy to the purpose she already had. Their children, their grandchildren, the women doctors she'd trained, the lives she'd saved, the love she'd built with this good man beside her. All of it had stemmed from her willingness to be brave in multiple ways. Brave enough to claim her profession in a world that didn't want to give it to her. Brave enough to claim her heart when it would have been easier to remain alone. Adelaide Thompson, Dr. Adelaide Thompson, had become a legend in Enid and beyond. But she'd also become something simpler and more profound than legend. She'd become a woman who lived fully, loved deeply, and proved that choosing both your calling and your heart wasn't weakness but the ultimate strength. When Adelaide passed peacefully in her sleep at the age of 84, with Asher's hand in hers as it had been for nearly 50 years, half the Oklahoma Territory came to her funeral. Former patients, their children, their grandchildren, women doctors who credited her as their inspiration, town officials who praised her contributions. And at the center of it all, Asher, grief-stricken but proud, holding their children close and telling anyone who would listen about the brilliant, stubborn, magnificent woman who'd been his wife. He followed her 6 months later, his heart simply stopping one morning as he sat on their porch. Their children buried him beside Adelaide in the Enid cemetery, under a headstone that read beloved wife, devoted physician, woman of courage on her side, and beloved husband, faithful partner, man of steadfast love on his. The hospital in Enid was renamed the Adelaide Thompson Medical Center, training new generations of doctors regardless of gender. The ranch continued through their descendants, a living testament to the life they'd built. And the story of the lady doctor who'd come to Oklahoma Territory when it was barely civilized, who'd faced down doubt and prejudice and won, became the kind of tale mothers told their daughters to inspire courage. She'd come to Enid expecting to have to prove herself as a doctor. She'd found that, and so much more. She'd found love in the most unexpected place, with a cowboy who'd seen her worth from the very beginning. Together they'd built something that outlasted both of them, a legacy of healing and partnership, and the radical act of refusing to choose between professional purpose and personal fulfillment. The town had expected her to fail. The cowboy had expected her to stay. And she'd chosen him, chosen love, chosen a life that honored all of who she was. In the end, that choice had made all the difference, transforming not just her own life but the lives of countless others who came after, who looked at her example and thought if she could do it, maybe I can too. And that, more than any medical breakthrough or professional accolade, was perhaps Adelaide's greatest contribution. The proof that a woman didn't have to shrink herself to be acceptable, didn't have to choose between her mind and her heart, didn't have to face the world alone. The proof that the right partner would stand beside her, celebrating her strengths rather than feeling threatened by them, expanding her possibilities rather than limiting them. Years after both Adelaide and Asher had passed, their great-granddaughter stood in front of the Adelaide Thompson Medical Center, about to begin her own medical career. She carried Adelaide's original medical bag, carefully preserved through the generations, and wore a locket with photos of both Adelaide and Asher inside. "Thank you," she whispered to their memory. "Thank you for being brave. Thank you for choosing love. Thank you for showing us it was possible." Then she walked through the doors, ready to write her own story, carrying forward the legacy of a woman who'd refused to let anyone's expectations define her limits, and a man who'd loved her for exactly that courage. The story of Adelaide and Asher Thompson lived on, not just in the buildings and institutions that bore their names, but in every person who chose to be fully themselves, who refused false choices, who believed that love and purpose could coexist beautifully if you were brave enough to reach for both. The Wild West had been a hard place, unforgiving and rough, but it had also been a place where old rules could be broken and new possibilities claimed. Adelaide Crawford had stepped off that stage in 1893, knowing she'd have to fight for every inch of respect. She couldn't have known that she'd also find a love that would sustain her through every battle, a partnership that would prove as important to her legacy as her medical skill. She'd proven the town wrong. She'd honored Asher's faith in her. And most importantly, she'd been true to herself, refusing to be anything less than all she could be. That was the real victory, the real triumph that echoed through the generations. Not just that she'd succeeded as a doctor, but that she'd succeeded as a complete human being, claiming both professional excellence and personal joy without apology or compromise. Their love story became part of Enid's folklore, the lady doctor and the cowboy who'd believed in her, who'd built a life and a legacy together in the red Oklahoma dust. It was a story of courage and faith, of stubborn determination and patient love, of refusing to accept the limitations others tried to impose. It was, in the end, exactly the kind of story the Wild West was made for. Stories of people brave enough to claim what they wanted, to fight for what they believed in, to build something new in a place that offered equal parts opportunity and hardship. Adelaide and Asher Thompson had done exactly that, leaving behind not just descendants and institutions, but proof that love and respect and partnership could transform everything, could turn doubters into believers and obstacles into opportunities. The sun set over Enid as it had 1,000 times before, painting the Oklahoma sky in shades of gold and crimson. The town that had once expected Adelaide to fail now stood as testament to what happened when determination met opportunity, when skill met need, when courage met love. The medical center treated hundreds of patients daily. The ranch supplied beef to half the territory. The school educated children without regard to gender. And in the cemetery, side by side under the vast western sky, Adelaide and Asher rested together, their story complete, their legacy secure, their love eternal.